What's up, world, and welcome back to Unseen Work, the live stream and podcast. Very happy St. Patrick's Day to all of you. Hopefully, you are sober enough to thoroughly enjoy this conversation tonight. And it's going to be a good one. But before we get to our guest tonight, let me remind you what it is we're here to talk about, right? So, cue my ticker and shameless self-promotion, right? I wrote the book on unseen work, literally. Here it is. You can check out the book on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or my favorite, milesbiggs.com. And unseen work is this idea that it's easy to see people for the work that they've done or what they've accomplished, right? It's what we put out there on social media like this. But what we don't see is what happened to get them there. All of that unseen work, everything that they toiled away on in the trenches, in the shadows, to prepare them for the moment where we actually saw what they brought to life or what they became successful for, right? So each week we are interviewing awesome individuals who are seen for something very specific or have achieved some level of success in whatever it is they're doing, and we're unpacking the unseen work of how they got there. Because that is where the lessons can be learned, and that is where folks like you and me can learn something from what they did and apply it to what we are working on, and hopefully accelerate our own pathway to that spotlight, whatever that is for any of you all watching. So reminder, as you are watching this, you can comment on the stream if you're watching it live. If you're listening back to it on the podcast and you're audio only, you missed the boat, tune in live next time. But for you guys watching right now, here's an example. The comment will look like this, where you see that funny duck head would be your face, and you can bring your own questions, your own insights into the conversation, and we can co-create this interview together, which is pretty fun. So please do that. At least just drop in and let me know who you are, that you're there, say hello. It's always fun to see who's watching beyond just a static number on my news feed. So with that, we're going to get into our guest this evening. And if you saw any of my teaser social posts to this leading up, you will have seen that it's a very special guest, someone very near and dear to my heart. It's my wife, Claire Biggs, and we are going to chat with her about her unseen work for a specific topic that she wanted to bring to the show tonight. So full disclosure, I'm upstairs in our house, right, because we're married, we live together. Claire's downstairs on the couch. There's a very real possibility that a 3-year-old could also enter this live stream at any time, as any fellow parents might be aware, or a screaming baby could fly off. So this is going to be fun. This is true live entertainment, everybody. We'll bring Claire in, but I just want to give you that PSA that if you see her dart out of frame for a minute and I take her out of the stream, it's probably because a little human needs some love and attention, and that's okay. So here she is, the beautiful Claire Biggs. Hello.
Hi.
Did you like that? Was that good? Was that a good?
That
Talk
was
you up
great.
enough?
Yeah.
Did I miss any
You did.
of your finer qualities?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. So you are unique in the fact, right, that you get to live with me, right? That's very unique.
Mm-hmm.
But so most guests, we don't get to talk about it all week leading up to the stream. Whereas you or I were talking like, hey, what do you want to talk about? Or hey, what's your idea? We're kind of discussing and framing out what this discussion would be. And ultimately you arrived on this is your topic, that what you felt like you're seen for, which a lot of unseen work that you're doing right now revolves around, your role as a mom and motherhood. So that'll be the main focus of our discussion tonight, is the unseen work of motherhood. So where do you want to begin with that? I feel like big topic, right? Motherhood, your unseen work. I think it's cool that we sat down and did a podcast for Relish the Journey after Mason was born. And we kind of unpacked it a little bit then before I had the idea. And now we have Noah 2 months ago. Well, you had Noah 2.5 months ago. And so we're kind of talking about it again. So if we start there, what do you think has changed in motherhood for you going from 1 kid to 2?
Oh gosh, I think a lot. I think the transition from 1 to 2 has been so much easier than 0 to 1. In a lot of ways, but it's also been really challenging in a lot of other ways too. But yeah, I've been reflecting on the podcast that I did 3 years ago, right after Mason was born. And so it's kind of funny that we're back here full circle with number two. Um, but I think I'm more relaxed this time around. So I think that we've certainly learned a lot from Mason, and he is certainly a wild and crazy and rambunctious 3 year old. So he's been a lot of fun, and it's been a lot of fun to see him in his new role as big brother, too. But I feel like there's this sense of ease this time around, and we are both, I think you and I, really just kind of comfortable. And, Noah came into the picture, and honestly, it kind of felt like we didn't really skip a beat. It's not to say that we aren't exhausted and sleep deprived and, all of those things that come with having a newborn in the house. But I just think it was a lot easier than I was expecting it to be. But that's a good thing. I also think we're in a completely different place than we were 3 years ago. We had just moved into this house after having been in a one-bedroom apartment temporarily for, gosh, 3 or 4 months, I think.
Yeah.
The house was still under construction. We didn't know what the heck we were doing as brand new parents. And so, that was stressful in and of itself. And we don't have that going on this time. And so I think that has also made this experience so different than the first time around. But I think there's also challenges. It's juggling two little ones need our attention, and finding that balance. And Mason's at that age where he needs a lot of attention. He's certainly an independent kid, but he still is three. And the house is baby proofed, but it's not 3 year old toddler proofed, I feel like.
Right.
So it's finding those different challenges that pop up every day. But in general, I feel like we've survived. I feel like if we got through like the first 6 weeks, which is like the hardest part, I feel like, of having a newborn. And so now we're just kind of in the groove of things.
Yeah, it didn't strike me until you gave that little intro there, right? But in many ways, kid number one is unseen work for kid number two, right? Like, you're right, it's different when you have
Mhm.
the first kid. Like, I know personally, I was freaking out. Like, I feel like I'm going to break this little human. What am I doing? Everything's brand new. You've never done it before. And so there's a whole aspect that's very much mental, and you get in your head and you're anxious, and it's very stressful. And
Mhm.
now with the second child, it's more just relaxed. You're like, I've done it before. I know what to expect. This reminds me of when that happened, and I was able
Mhm.
to get through that just fine. So this will be just fine, right? You've kind of
Mhm.
you cut our teeth per se, right, on the first one, and the
Mhm.
second one benefits from that, and we benefit from that as parents because it's more at ease, for sure.
Mhm. Yeah, I think I was looking back in the moment, probably wouldn't have felt this way, but looking back when Mason was a newborn, I was, I think, constantly a ball of nerves. And in the moment, I think I just felt like I'm clueless. That's normal. But I think it was. I think it really was just nervous. You just, every single day, something new happened that you had never experienced before. And it was scary sometimes and funny sometimes, but it was just new. And so now with Noah going through a lot of those similar things, it's like riding a bike a little bit. But they are very different kids. And I know that we've talked about that a lot, obviously, but
Yeah,
they're very different babies. And so that's a new challenge. It's,
right.
what Mason liked at this age, Noah doesn't like. And so it's just learning who he is. I think that's a different, you know, challenge that we have to kind of work through.
Hey, we got our first comment here. Sarah Yoder, I miss Claire. Can't wait
Oh,
until she comes back to
Sarah.
work.
I miss you too. Miss you too.
Yeah, so thanks for watching, Sarah. And this is a reminder to everybody else watching. I see that there are more people here, so don't be shy. Get active in the comments. We love pulling you into the show. So, Sarah, if you got any questions for Claire about mom life, send them our way. And anybody watching, right? If you need anything deliciously prepared for you, check out Amore Creations. Right, Sarah? I've had some super
Yeah.
good stuff.
Hmm.
All right. So I'm curious. We talk about this, how the second kid a little bit easier than the first. They're different. So how do you prepare for mom life? Right, four, almost 4ish years ago. Right, you find out you're going to be a mom for the first time. The unseen work begins. Right before you meet your child. What did you do to get ready?
Hmm.
And what did you two parter? What did you do, and what do you wish you had done that you didn't do?
Well, I wish that we hadn't decided to build a house and move into said house when I was 9 months pregnant.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, they
that
say, right,
was
the most stressful things in life are buying or selling a home, moving, and giving birth, and we did all three at once.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so it was a hectic pregnancy. Um, so I would not do that again. So that was the nice thing about with Noah. We were just settled,
Just home.
which
Yeah.
was really nice, even more so with COVID. We were really settled. Um, but I don't know. I definitely perused the internet, but I feel like I didn't go crazy with like looking at mommy blogs and stuff until after Mason was born. And that's where I just made myself nuts. In the middle of the night, he's not sleeping, we're exhausted. I'm like, scrolling through social media trying to get advice and, all of these like fast tips to get your baby to sleep, and don't believe any of it because it's not true. They're going to figure it out on their own. And so with Noah, I feel less concerned with all of that and less stressed over sleep, which is weird because I think we're equally exhausted, if not more so, because we're chasing after a toddler. Um, so I let a lot of that go the second time around. And so reflecting back on the first time, I wish that I hadn't gone down that path because it's very toxic. And it just adds stress and anxiety to the situation that you don't need. Um, and so I think that has helped, this time around. Um, but I think too, just kind of talking to my mom, and she's been through it numerous times, and, what is the baby going to need? And, those kinds of conversations I think were really helpful. I didn't get to nest the first time around because we were in three different homes throughout his entire pregnancy. So, um, with Noah, it was nice to put a nursery together before he was here and have all of the clothes washed before he was here. Um, so I think that was helpful. But I think it's one of those things you're never really prepared for. I think it's the same goes with, well, how did you know you were ready to have kids? You kind of don't. You, if you want kids and you know that that's something important to you, you'll just do it and figure out how your life is going to kind of reprioritize. I think that was a big thing that you and I both had as a huge takeaway after Mason,
Yeah.
was just the things that we used to get hung up on and that used to consume our time no longer had a place in our life. They just weren't important anymore. So I think it's coming to terms with that. Certainly kids change your life and it adds a whole different dynamic. But you also don't have to give up the person that you were pre-baby. You've got to hang on to that as well. Um, and so, I think just kind of accepting like our life's going to change. We have no idea what we're doing, but we're in it together and we'll figure it out together. That was helpful. Um, Beyond that, I feel like we kind of just enjoyed it. I loved being pregnant both times. Um, and I think just allowing ourselves to enjoy that time was super helpful leading up to both of our babies arriving. It wasn't um, stressful in the sense that we were like anxious about becoming parents. It was just like, with Nathan, your first one, you have no idea when it's going to happen. And ours was totally a crazy story, but, I think just
Yeah.
letting yourself live in the moment and enjoy that time, because looking back, it flies by. Noah's been here for almost 3 months. I don't even remember what it was like to be pregnant, and it wasn't that long
Right.
ago. So, um, yeah, I think you just kind of go with the flow.
Yeah, you said you don't have to lose who you are when you become a parent, right? Like you don't have to lose, like you're still you, right? For me, I found I think I've become a better version of myself as a parent. It's like in many ways I did lose who I was, but I lost the bad stuff, in my opinion. I lost the stuff that didn't serve me, the kind of silly, childish stuff, and then I've leaned into
Mm-hmm.
the more adult side of me, and then it's more of like who do I want to be for my sons? Like what example do I want to set? And that's me as a dad with two boys. I feel like that's a little bit dynamic, right? A different dynamic for me as a dad raising two boys. It's like literally the role model as like they're going to look
Mm-hmm.
to me as the men that they should be kind of thing, right? At least in my head. I'm curious for you as a mom of boys, do you feel something similar, right? Is it like, yeah, you're still you, but you feel like certain pieces of you have become more accentuated or you've leaned into them and gotten rid of others?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so in a way. I think, I am naturally an incredibly type A person. I'm a perfectionist. And so I've certainly had to shed some of that, over the years, and probably in this season of our life, I've really had to let go a lot of that, which is a good thing because I can get really uptight. I can get really in my head about making sure everything is, perfect and all of the toys are put away and, that
Right.
kind of thing. And um, I make myself crazy. I make other people crazy about all of that. So I've learned to loosen up, and I think that was really important for me and something that I wouldn't have expected necessarily. Because I think you also get in your mind like I'm going to have this baby, and I'm not going to have all of those loud, obnoxious toys, and everything's going to be color coordinated, and it's going to go with the theme of my house, and that's garbage. I'll tell you that right now. Like, let in the loudest, craziest toys because that's what your kid needs and it's what you want. And I'm guilty of bringing them into the house now. So I've let go of kind of what we do see on the internet, those kind of false veils that are painted of what motherhood is supposed to be like. And so I've just allowed myself to be the mom that I've kind of naturally fallen into. Um, and the mom that our kids need, because I think at the end of the day, we know our kids the best, and you've got to just give them what they need, and just be the person that they need. So I think I've grown into that person. Um, and I've reprioritized, before
Yeah.
kids, it was um, work, I think for both of us was the center of our lives. We were constantly traveling and gone on the weekends, and we never really enjoyed our home together and our community together. And so now that we've got kids in the picture, obviously COVID aside, but we've kind of reprioritized what we want out of that, and we want, to enjoy our home and our community and our kids and our family. And so we're doing that, and that's something that I think was a really positive outcome of all this. We've slowed down, um, and that I think has been a really positive thing.
Yeah, I agree. And we got a question here from a dad whom we both know.
Okay.
We got Rich Savner, father of one. He's expecting another.
Hmm.
So congratulations, Rich, of course, especially
Yeah.
after the big news we saw on social media today. We're very happy for you and for Megan. Absolutely. So he's asking, Claire, what's your biggest piece of advice to husbands or partners of expectant mothers that would help make life as a mother easier?
Hmm. I think just, gosh, this is a loaded question, Rich. But I'll
What am
speak
I not
from
doing that I should be doing?
well, no, I'll speak from the perspective that you're in right now, right? So you've got a toddler, a busy toddler running around, and a pregnant wife, and we were just living that exact life not that long ago, and it was just it it was nice to not have to think about things that I normally did, So it wasn't uncommon for Miles just to start the laundry or, do the dishes or those kinds of things. And while it sounds really trivial, um, it's one less thing I had to worry about. But I think the best thing that I never realized I needed until Miles started doing it, and he has been for years, is he's the first one with kids in the morning. He is much more of a morning person than I am. Um, and so when I was really pregnant and exhausted and uncomfortable, he just took care of Mason and the dog in the morning and let me sleep. Honestly, that was the best. And he still will do that, on the weekends, which is tremendous. So I think, those kinds of simple things. And I'm sure Miles will tell you that I was a different pregnant person both times.
Yeah,
I
you were.
just was. I don't know how to explain. I mean, I'm sure you could explain it better, but I was different um, this time around. I think I mean, I still loved the experience, but I was exhausted and running after a very busy toddler and working, and, I was just different. So um, it's the little things that I think go a long way.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would add to that, right, to Rich's question here. That's your take. My take to this, you spoke to it a little bit, is like guys out there watching or partners of someone who's pregnant or, whatever your situation is with a new baby in the house, you know your partner better than anybody, right? So it's like, it's going to be different. Like, I could always tell when Claire was just like tired and needed to sleep, right? You pick up on it. And so that's what I did. Or I can tell when it's been a rough day because she's 8 months pregnant and our oldest son is nuts that day and the laundry basket's overflowing. So it's like you try to look through the house from your partner's eyes and figure, like, when she mentioned she's a type A personality, likes everything in her place. That's true. I know that. I've been married to her for 6 years. So I can look around the house thinking like her and say, okay, what can I do that's going to relieve some of that stress for her? And then just do it without being asked. Right. So it's just, for me, I always try to do that because I'm a fixer. I like to fix everything. You can't fix like pregnant, right? As a guy, like there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can help with, even with labor and delivery, right? All you can do is figure out a way to step in and help in your own way. And so you gave some examples of that, Claire, and that's just my 2 cents added on top of that, and you'll figure it out. I'm sure you're doing awesome, Rich. If Megan's watching, Megan, comment and give Rich some love. Tell us what he's doing great, and we'll throw it up on the screen. And here's another comment, Claire. Hey, compliment from Kendra here. I'm just impressed that you aren't sitting waiting for your kids to wake up while you're having this conversation. That's all I do all evening once our 2-year-old and 4-month-old are in bed.
Oh, hey, it took us an hour to get to this point, so don't you
I was gonna
worry.
say,
It is
talk
not
about
as
unseen
simple.
work, which you guys don't see right now is like
Bedtime.
the half dozen times Mason got out of bed and said, "Mom, Dad, I need to have a
Yeah,
conversation with you," and
yeah,
we're putting him back
yeah.
in
But
bed.
I will,
Yeah,
I will say, there is no better feeling when you get to the point when you do successfully have all of your kids asleep at the same time. Man, I feel like real proud parents when we get there. But again, it takes us at least an hour to get there. So
yeah. So you're not alone, Kendra. You're not alone. But
no.
that goes to a little bit of comparison, right? And you touched on this, and Kendra did it in a nice way. She made a comparison between the two of us. She gave us a compliment. You mentioned sitting there and scrolling through social media and it not being a good thing. So this is something I'm curious about. Like, people will see on social media the good stuff, right? We do it. We post the family photos with our kids and everybody's smiling and looking at the camera. You see that one photo. You don't see the 50 others that led up to it where, the kids screaming and crawling all over and, crying for whatever. You just see that perfect, social media worthy moment. So I'm sure those middle of the night sessions, you're desperate for help and all you see are these perfect moms, right, on social media. That has to affect your mental state in some way, right? So you made it seem like it was bad. Any good to it on social media? Is it mostly just that you stay away from it, or how was your experience like there?
Yeah. No, I think that's where there's been some growth too, is so, when Mason was born, I was in a couple mom Facebook groups and I would just literally spend all night scrolling through, comments and questions that other moms would post and advice that would be thrown out there. I never posted anything. Um, So I wasn't necessarily that type of active participant. I was just a consumer of the content, but it gets in your head. And so I was very deliberate with Noah that I removed myself from all of those groups. And I just said, you know what? We know what worked for Mason, lots of lessons learned. We know this is a different baby. So we're going to have to learn who he is and what he needs from us. And I can just kind of push that, content to the side. So I think if you can learn to filter in what you need and out what you don't need, it's the same thing when people give you advice, unsolicited advice when you're pregnant or when you're getting married. It's like, okay, take what you need, leave what you don't. Um, so there's definitely good and bad to it. It's just, are you, I guess, in a place where you recognize that it's becoming a negative in your life, and can you walk away from it? Because it can, you can just get sucked in. Now, I scroll through Instagram and follow a lot of, moms who are blogging and out there doing their thing. And I don't feel that sense of comparison anymore the way that I definitely did with Mason. I think I've just learned that, um, to your point, people put out there the content that they want to put out there. And so you always have to remember our Christmas card circa 2018 when Mason pitched a huge fit right before the camera went off, and we got
Yeah.
pictures of him screaming, and that's what we put on the Christmas card because that's what we had and that was real life. So I think if
Yep.
you remember that there's always a kid screaming in the background, you'll feel better about yourself, and know you also have to trust yourself and your partner and what you're doing, because social media can absolutely be the place to go for advice and for, positive tidbits to lift you up when you need it. But it can absolutely be a black hole that you can let yourself get sucked into if you can't, um, filter that in and out for yourself. And so I think it's just finding a balance. And we are also, well, me, I'm not a big, sharer on social media. I consume much more than I produce. And so I think that's also an element of me controlling the situation, because that's
Sure.
what I need.
Yeah, I think it could really like feed on your insecurities, right? Like the first time you weren't confident in yourself
Hmm.
because you hadn't done it before, and it just feeds into that. And now you've done it before.
Hmm.
We're successful at it. The kid's still alive. He's growing. He's doing good.
Hmm.
So it must be working. So
Hmm.
there's less to worry about. And then, so I think that just plays into like the not knowing makes it worse. And I think that's what
Yeah.
happens on social is you fill in the gaps with that. Good.
Yeah. And I think, obviously you're still going to have those moments where you're going to start to have some self doubt by scrolling through that feed. I just a couple of weeks ago, I was up in the middle of, or it was like early in the morning, and getting kids around, and I'm scrolling through Instagram, and somebody said, "Oh, my baby slept for 12 hours, didn't wake up once, and this baby's like a week older than Noah." And I was like, "Well, what the heck? Why isn't Noah doing that?" And then I realized he'll do it when he's ready. You
Right.
do have to kind of stop and remind yourself that it's not your life and you can't make those types of comparisons. So it certainly still creeps in, but you just have to remind yourself that there's a lot of other things going on that you don't see.
Absolutely. For sure. So Sarah's comment earlier said she can't wait for you to go back to work, right? You are what they call a working mom. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
curious. Think about unseen work, right? People around the office. You could be in a boardroom. You're giving a presentation. All they see is your stellar confidence, right? Killer good looks. They don't know about all the mom stuff, right? How do you feel like being a mom has impacted your career? Do you feel like it's helped your confidence at work, your quality of work at work, or not?
Hmm.
What's the element? How does one play into one another?
Yeah, I think, I very vividly remember my first day back to work after maternity leave with Mason, even down to what I was wearing. just you remember all of those details. Um, but I think two things. I think the first is once you become a parent, mom, dad, whatever you go by, and you return to work outside of the home, you're never 100% mentally at work, right? It's just the fact of the matter. You've got this other person or people who are taking up a large portion of your brain space, as they should. Um, so I think that was a big difference. My first couple of weeks back, my whole lunch hour, I would just stare at photos and videos of Mason. Your brain is just wired very differently at that point. And I think the second thing is you recognize, okay, I have a very finite of time now in my day that I have to be productive at work because I have to leave at a very distinct time of day. Um, whether it's because you just want to get back to your kids, right? Or daycare's closing at a certain time and you've got to be
Right.
there and pick up the kids by a certain time. And so I think in my work day outside of the home, I'm much more productive because I, I got to get in and I got to get out. I used to get to work an hour early at least, and I used to stay at least an hour late, quote unquote, because it's all relative these days. And that was no big deal. But the second kids enter the picture, you don't have that luxury anymore all the time. Um, and so I think I became a much more productive employee because I wanted to get as much done during the day so that I could get out to pick up Mason and get home and have family time. And our house is it's a rat race from the minute we walk in the door at the end of the day until bedtime. And so
Yeah.
um, every minute is so, so precious at the end of the day. Not only because we are a little bit strict in our bedtime, but also because there's not much time before bedtime. By the time you get home and have dinner
Yeah.
and all of those things, it's time for the bedtime rush. And so those minutes are precious. Um, so I think, it's forced me to not sweat the small stuff and recognize that there's just so much more to life than the things that used to get me so stressed and anxious at work. I can now think differently about those things. Um, and I do think that my confidence has grown, and I'm a little bit more bold in my decision making at work for the better, I think. And I tackle problems a lot differently than I used to, and I'm not as timid as I used to be. I've just kind of adopted this be bold mindset, and I think that is certainly a result of stepping into motherhood. I think, which has been a really good thing career wise too. Certainly in a different position than I was when Mason was born. So I think that is also indicative of the fact that you just kind of do become a little bit of a different person. Your priorities shift. It's kind of reworking your brain. When you're at work, again, you've still got that piece that's thinking of your family. Um, but that work brain functions differently too, I think.
Yeah, I think it's like you said. I was the same way, right? You get there early, you stay late, and because you feel like everyone's gonna see that, and you're gonna be like, "Wow, they work so hard,"
Mhm.
right? But I feel like so much of it's primal, right? Like your motivators. Like you think about like hunter gatherers. Like if it's just you, like you just have to feed you. You're out there in the woods looking for berries and like a rabbit, right? And, well, you get it, you eat, cool. You're not that hungry, but then you start going out and thinking about I gotta feed the family of four back home. You're way more motivated to get in, get what you need, get out, and take care of everybody. And I feel you take that into any job, and I think it's the same thing, right?
Hmm.
It's just like you
But
said, your
then,
brain
but then here's,
changes.
but then here's this like weird mom guilt, work guilt thing, right, that comes into play. So, and this is the piece that's unseen, if you will. Um, I'm in a leadership position where I work, and so by nature, you've got to lead by example, right? our work day officially ends at 4:30, and I literally cannot be out the door any later than 4:45 because Mason's daycare closes, and I have to pick him up on time because we'll be penalized if not. And nobody wants
Right.
their kid to be sitting in the principal's office because mom was late, right?
Yeah.
So on the one hand, I've got to run out the door to pick up my kid because I don't want to be late. On the other hand, you've got this team of people that you're leading that's watching you walk out the door the second the clock strikes 4:30, even though you're having conversations with your team like got to work hard, and you've sometimes you do have to go the extra mile and blah 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 blah, and it's this balance of um it, this weird guilt thing. It's like they don't know why I'm running out the door. They do, but they don't know why I'm running out the door. It's that piece that you don't see what people do after work, but I can't wait to get out the door because that means I'm a minute closer to seeing my kids. But at the same time, you also kind of feel like I'm that person that I have to leave the second the day is over. Um, but then you've got to remind yourself, well, I'm working really hard and I do come home and work after the kids are asleep, and
Right.
so you can get in your head about that kind of stuff too. Um, and that's really hard. Now I don't know what back to work life is going to be like with two kids. So it's going to be just as crazy, and we're, getting kids from two different places at that point. But I think that's another piece that I wasn't quite prepared for going back to work. I actually don't even think it crossed my mind, until you're kind of in the moment realizing this feels different. Um, and what are people saying? I think that's something that you do kind of think about a lot is, well, what are people saying when they see me walk out the door, or,
Sure.
only walking in 10 minutes before the, first bell rings, if you will. Because it is an overnight shift. You go from, maybe you would put in those 12, 13-hour days to suddenly the minimum because that's all you can do. But what are you doing during that time? It looks very different.
Yeah, I think it's a great example for some people if they were ever talk about being bold. If anybody was ever bold enough to question, right, why you're leaving or getting there, it's like you talk about the quality of work, right? And it's not about how long you're there, really. It's about what you get done. And it's the comparison thing again, whether it's on
Mm-hmm.
social media or in the workplace, right? It's natural for us to wonder what people think about us, care what people think about us, and then compare ourselves to them, feeling like,
Mm-hmm.
we're not doing the best, even if you are. So yeah, the guilt, that is a big
Mm-hmm.
unseen part of it, I'm sure, and a driver
Mm-hmm.
for many people in behaviors and
Mm-hmm.
just how we show up as parents in the workplace or just as parents in general.
Mm-hmm.
So this kind of leads in to the next
Yeah,
topic of
and
conversation a little bit. Good. You're going to say something?
well, I was just going to say, I'll be curious. I know this is about motherhood, but it's all parenthood,
Yeah.
When I go back to work, you're going to have drop off and pick up duties too. So I'll be curious, how does that, come into your day-to-day psyche? Because a lot of times there's this stigma attached to being the working mom, working out of the home mom versus the working out of the home dad, right?
Yeah.
And so I'll just be curious, do you feel that kind of sense of rush at the end of the day? Like, I gotta go. I have to get my kid. I can't be late. Um, because it's, I think, an unexpected thing.
Yeah. It'll be interesting. We'll report back to everybody watching. We'll let you know. But the guilt thing makes me think of failure a little bit, right? That
Mm-hmm.
you might feel like you're failing at work or at parenthood, and that guilt creeps in, right? So talk about the unseen work, that whole idea. In the book, I talk about flips and flops. So flip being when you fail, you learn, you improvise, and you pivot. So you take that quote unquote failure and really turn it into a moment to learn from that perceived failure and get stronger. So through this lens of the unseen work of motherhood, I'm curious if you can think of any flips, any times where you feel like you failed but you flipped it and put it to work for you instead of against you.
Gosh, every day. I think that's another thing you have to let go of this, like, I'm going to be this picture perfect parent, or at least I had to let that go.
Sure.
I learned very quickly that that's just, it's unrealistic. Um, gosh, it's hard to like narrow it down to one thing. I think I don't know. Like Mason is he's 3 and he is uh, busy and independent and smart and hilarious and very strong-willed and
Yeah.
curious. You know, he's kind of all these things in this little body that, struggles with expressing all of those things. And so um, I think every day I fail at helping him grow through those moments. But at the end of the day, I always reflect on, okay, well, I know I didn't like how that ended up. So tomorrow I'm going to try this different approach, or I'm going to try to let this go a little bit more. I think back to me being this crazy type A personality, we've got this playroom that is like the bane of my existence. And I think I said to you just the other day, I'm gonna let it go. I'm gonna clean it just once a day because trying to do it 52 times a day is stressing me out. It's stressing Mason out. We're arguing over it. He doesn't want to do it. It's just, we end up not happy with each other in those moments. And so as a result, I think we're happier at the end of the day because
Yeah.
he likes to play in everything and he's, all over the place and he's an independent little boy in there, so just let him make a mess. He's safe, he's not hurting anybody. Let it go. So I think for me in the moment it felt like a failure, like, oh my God, my house is a mess. 'Cause I also have in my head, like at any given moment, my house has to be perfect in case somebody comes knocking on the door. Like the UPS guy's not going to come in the house. But for whatever reason, I'm scrubbing the floors when I see him come down the driveway. So I've let a lot of that go. Um, so I think that's been a failure that I've learned to overcome. Um, gosh,
I
potty
think it's a good
training was
example.
rough with Mason,
Yeah.
but
Still is.
it still is. But I think we're getting better every day, and he's getting better every day. But that's something that I would say. Um, I also don't, we just didn't know what we were doing. So there's that.
Yeah.
But I think, we've worked really hard to get where we are with him now, and we'll keep getting better. Nighttime is a fiasco. 6 months ago, it wasn't this rough, but now it is, so we just have to kind of keep working through that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're to your point, like just communication with a toddler is a constant flip because it's constantly
Yeah.
iterating and learning and like, well, he didn't like it when I said that, or when I react this way, then
Mm.
he's gonna repeat that phrase over and over and over again, like "No way, Jose," like he's saying right now, right? And you learn maybe I shouldn't do that, and
Yeah.
I'll try something
And
different, and yeah, good,
yeah. And we've always talked to him like a person. We never really talk to him like a baby or, a little kid. Obviously, we talk to him in ways that he can sort of understand or we can help him understand. So I think that is something that we've learned, um, early on is to he's learning to reason and he's trying to understand things. And so us recognizing, like, just talk to him, help him understand, I think has been the best way for us to communicate. But yeah, it's an ongoing battle some days, because he's frustrated with not knowing how to articulate what he wants to.
right?
Um, so it's trying to, you have to learn a new language in this whole thing too.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, and sort of remember like what it is to be. You can't remember what it is to be 3, but like
Mhm.
what would it be like if you didn't know what you knew, right? Like we know why it
Right.
makes sense not to do this and why we're saying no, but he has no idea. He hasn't
Hmm.
experienced the negative side that we're trying to protect him from, right? And so it's
Hmm.
you kind of to me it's been a good learning experience in life in general. It's just like reminding yourself, kind of like you said, like everybody's got at work, like why is somebody late or why is somebody leaving early? Like everybody's got their own stuff going on and their own way to like perspective on things. And I think that's a big thing of parenthood that you learn too through your kids is that the way they see the world is completely different than the way you see it, but you still have to find a way, like you said, a new language to communicate and come to an agreement on
Hmm.
things so that everybody can live peacefully in the same house.
Yeah. And he's learning so much every single day that that's overwhelming, but it's also inspiring. It's the little things that get him so excited, and it makes you think as an adult, well, man, I haven't been that excited about a stink bug in the house ever, but I guess it is pretty cool, you know?
Yeah.
So I think if you can kind of lean into those moments too, then it feels a little less chaotic and stressful and a little less like you're failing and a little more like it's fine to be three. It is just fine. And
Yeah.
just accept it.
Another comment here. It's a little bit long one from Caitlin Kane, another LICO alumni. Hello. She's sharing, she said, a friend shared analogy of juggling glass balls and rubber balls. Some days work is the glass ball,
Mm.
and other days kids are the glass ball. The balance is when you have to learn and relearn. And she likes what we're saying about pivot, and she's grateful she can listen. And she has kids that are 6 and 3,
Hmm.
3-year-old boys. She's laughing about that they are funny.
Yeah.
And I love that, Caitlin. I heard a similar analogy
There's
from a
something else.
woman I interviewed on my podcast, Rails the Journey, Sarah Noose, and she talked about that. She gave the example of kind of like what Claire's saying about cleaning up the playroom, like leave the dirty dishes in the sink, right? Like no one really
Hmm.
cares. Let that be the rubber ball that you drop and it's going to bounce and it will be there for you to pick up when you're ready. But don't drop the glass ball, which is time with your kids because you only get so much of it and it's juggling those priorities. What can you set and kind of let bounce and wait, and what do you have to guard because it's so precious that you don't want to break it, right? So I agree with you. I love
Hmm.
that analogy as well, and I appreciate you sharing.
Yeah.
It's good to know somebody else out there gets the 3-year-old boy thing because it's
Hmm.
people talk about terrible twos, but the three-nager, right, is a
No,
whole nother ball
it's
game.
three. Yeah.
So we're coming up on the end of this. It's already been 50 minutes, believe it or not, Claire. So one last thing I'm curious about through the lens of unseen work, and I'll let you end it on whatever you want to end it on. I'll let folks, now's the time if you have additional comments or questions that you want to make it into the live stream, drop them on us right now. But I'm curious, since we're talking about family with parenthood and motherhood, the
Hmm.
idea of generational unseen work, right? Which is this idea that everything that our mom and dad or grandparents did before us, the things that we can't see, set up the foundation for what we're able to do. And now, just like what we're doing is going to be the unseen work for Noah and Mason, right? So when it comes to motherhood, what do you feel like's been your generational unseen work? Like, do you feel like you are your mother? Like people would say, "I'm never going to be my mom," and now you're your mom. Do you feel like you do things differently because you've chosen to? Do you see elements of your grandma or aunts? Like, do you feel like you're now like bringing their unseen work, quote unquote, into light with how you're acting at all?
Oh, if I'm being honest, I am 100% my mother.
It pains you to
Um,
say it, but it happened.
and I say that with love. No, no. I mean, yes, certainly in moments like I'll say something, I'm like, oh my God, that's my mom. Um,
Well,
but
I'll just jump in. Like, I'm my dad. Like, for sure, my
yeah.
dad. And I
Hmm.
see it too, where it's like things that I would roll my eyes at with him when I was a kid growing up, or like I'll never do that. Like I am for sure
Hmm.
that in so many ways. So it happens.
Hmm. Yeah. But I definitely think I'm a mix of both of my parents too. Like I certainly have my moments where I feel a little bit more like, oh, that was my dad, creeping in there a little bit. So I think it's a mix of both. But I think, yeah, I don't know. It's hard to like pinpoint one thing. I mean, I have two sisters. I'm a middle child, and so I'm also the child of two middle children. And so I think that's why I'm a lot like my parents, because I think that middle child syndrome is a very real thing. You're forced to be independent and rather low maintenance when it comes to a lot of things. And so I think I see that in Mason. I see him as a very independent little boy. Um, Not always low maintenance, but maybe that'll come with time. Um, but I think, at the end of the day, I had a great childhood. I have just really fond memories of, holidays and birthdays. And, my sisters and I certainly had our fair share of arguments. And I think we could all agree we probably didn't become the best of friends until we were all in and out of college. And that's when we really became friends with mom. I think your mom is your mom until a moment in time, and then she's your best friend. Um, so I think right now I'm Mason's mom, Noah's mom, because that's what they need right now. I think we're strict. That that's how my parents were too, I think we've both said to Mason, if you don't finish your dinner, then it'll be breakfast in the morning. I think that's
Oh
something
my
that
gosh, I
we
know. And I
can
remember
probably
waking up
say
to a
we
steaming
heard
hot
growing
plate
up.
of, you know, green beans for breakfast.
So,
Yep.
you know, I think if anything, phrases trickle in that I heard growing up. Um, and so it's kind of funny when they come out of my mouth. I'm like, oh my God, in the moment, I'm sure I swore I would never say that to my kids, but here I am saying that to my kids.
All right.
Um, so I think those kinds of things have certainly helped. But we both said, both of us came from very um, loving families, and that's just the type of house and home that we want to create for our family. So I think the way that we kind of lean into the crazy, we're leaning into being our mom and our dad because it's just what works in the moment. It's what we
Absolutely.
know.
Yeah. So what do you think, right? Beauty of the internet is that this whole conversation we just had can live forever, and one day Mason and Noah can watch it. So all this unseen work we're talking about, they will see, right? So what do you hope they get as generational unseen work from us? Right? Like if we talk about us building this foundation for them, what do you hope that everything we do, both seen and unseen, both seen and unseen, sets them up for?
Oh gosh. Um, I hope they just see that we were clueless and we figured it out, and it's all going to be okay. I think there's no um, book or recipe or formula to figure any of this out. You just have to go with the flow. And so I hope that they see that in the moment we made the best decisions that we could and that we felt were right for that time in our life, and that we did it with love.
Great. And speaking of love, Caitlin popping in, my sister, three Bigses in one live stream. This is wild. Saying love you both. Thanks, Caitlin. We love you too. Thanks for watching. And thanks everybody else for commenting. Thanks to the beautiful Claire Biggs for being our guest. I appreciate you sitting in and chatting mom life with me. I know
Yeah.
this isn't as much your thing as it is my thing, and so you're humoring me, and I appreciate that. So thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Of
That was fun.
course. Good, good. And if you guys are still watching, I see you still are, make sure you join us next Wednesday, the 24th, same time, 8:45 Eastern. We will have Declan Brown on. He's one half of the Back Pocket Podcast, headquartered in Minneapolis, Minnesota, but Declan now goes by Decky West Coast because he is out living in an RV in the west coast of the United States, pursuing a career change that's been pretty cool for him. So we're going to unpack the unseen work of how they took the Back Pocket from a podcast to a podcast production company and what he's doing in an RV out west and how that factors in. So that'll be a fun conversation with him. And as always, if you guys are curious about what it's like to be a guest on the show, you can book yourself as a guest by following this link on the ticker, calendly.com/unseenwork/90 minutes. We'll book your slot and we'll get into it and we'll have some fun just like Claire did this evening. So Claire, any final parting words for the audience? You can say no, but I want to make sure you've said everything you want to say about the unseen work of motherhood.
I think just hang in there.
I love that. Here we go.
It's fun. It's a whirlwind. It's hard. It's the hardest job you'll ever have, but hang in there. You'll get through it.
Boom. Just hang in there. I like it. Well, thanks for hanging with us again, Claire. Thank to all of you watching, hanging with us. Be sure to like this, comment on this, share this. That's how more people get to see these conversations, which would make me very happy. And don't forget that you can buy this bad boy with more unseen work stories, basically wherever books are sold. It's pretty cool. If you Google this, it's everywhere. So that's pretty fun. So thanks for tuning in. We will see you next week. Cheers, everybody.